We're gathered here together today in loving memory of Richard Lyman Cates Sr. We're here today to pay tribute to, celebrate, and honor a life well lived, a singular life of a fine human being, our father, grandfather, great-grandfather, husband, father-in-law, brother-in-law, uncle, attorney, civic leader, citizen, and friend. We are all richer for having known Richard and for having shared the adventure of living with him. Welcome to all, family and friends. I want to especially thank Marnie's family for coming from the east, all of you, such a long way. It's a blessing to have your attendance here. Thank you for that long trip. I know that we also have friends that have come from quite a distance across the United States, and so thank you for your time and care. This memorial will run a little more than an hour, but you know, we've got several lawyers, politicians, clergy, and Cates on the program today. So we shouldn't have any trouble staying on time, eh? But after the memorial, you'll be invited to join us for conversation, for food and beverage. And also, after the ceremony, at that time, any of you who wish to record a few words of remembrance or stories about Dad, you can do so with Dawn, the videographer. Dawn, can you raise your hand? Did I say your title right, videographer?
Yes.
Find her and tell her anything that's on your mind. There'll be sadness and there'll be joy in this next hour. And you might as well do some joy first. I want to thank the Edgewater Hotel and specifically Scott Faulkner, the hotel owner, who extends a warm welcome to all of us. And that's partly because our family has a long and rich legacy here. And Scott and I had an opportunity earlier this week to reminisce and compare notes. In 1949, my father was fired from his first cooking job here in the Edgewater kitchen after 5 hours on the job. Well, he wasn't really fired from his job. You see, his great friend John Carnes, who was with Dad all the way through the Marines and now in law school together, got hired as a short order cook here. And on that particular Saturday morning, that was his first day, but he approached Dad with a predicament. He said, I have a really hot date, and there's no way I'm going to get to work next morning at 5:30. And so would you please fill in for me? And this is the honest God truth. Scott and I talked about it. So Dad, wanting to assist his great friend, said sure. The only problem was Dad can't cook. Well, Scott's father, Augie Faulkner, was the manager at the time. In fact, the hotel started in 1948. Here we are in 49, so Augie's a young buck. And now he became the owner in the 60s. So Dad's in the kitchen, and they're throwing short orders at him. Poached eggs, sheared eggs, medium boiled eggs. All Dad knew was fried and scrambled. Didn't matter to him. Cream of wheat to be boiled. Onions needed to be peeled. How do you know when you're finished peeling an onion? He's getting behind on the orders because they really start to roll in. And he's forgot he's got toast down and it burns black. One fellow wanted his milk warm. Dad forgot about it and boiled over onto the stove, so he went with cold milk and the guy was pissed. Dad said, push the cold cereal. The woman in charge of the early shift kept saying to Dad, do you know how important these people are out there? And then the head chef, a Frenchman, comes in at 10:30 and he's swearing at Dad. And Dad says, you know, as a Marine, I was used to profanity, but this guy couldn't even do it right because he had the wrong accent. Well, Augie Faulkner, as I say, Scott's father, who the Faulkners have owned the facility for all these years became friends. They became friends and colleagues. And so they'd see each other around Madison. But on this particular day, he came up and he said, "Dick, you're fired." And Dad said, "Well, you can't fire me. I'm not employed here." but can I still collect my wages? And, well, Augie said, "Just be patient." But John Carnes was fired within the next week as well, because he couldn't cook either. We think that my brother John was named after John Carnes, and so what a legacy he carried. Anyway, Augie and Dad grew to be close acquaintances through the years, and each time they'd see each other, Augie would tell Dad to be patient. And Augie finally died in '96, but in the mid-'90s, Dad described a situation where he sees a white Cadillac with tinted windows creeping towards him. The driver's side window was slowly lowered. It was Augie, to which he greeted my dad. This is 1995. "Kates, we're still working on those wages." Richard Lyman Cates Sr. died surrounded by family of natural causes on Wednesday morning, August 3rd in Madison, finishing his 85-year adventure that began on November 22nd, 1925 in New York City. He was an only child who lived almost 4 of his first 9 years in an orphanage and spent his Depression-era boyhood playing stickball on the streets and alleys of the Bronx and Queens. An urchin in the city, he learned to be fascinated, amused, and heartened by people. He wrote of those early and often lonely years that he'd learned how to do what he had to do, to have faith and to have patience, to think, to solve his own problems, and be able to realize how lucky he was. On visits to Philadelphia to visit his mother's family, he learned from his immigrant grandmother the fun a person can have no matter what the circumstances. And on the trips to Maine to visit his father's family, he learned the love of barns, the smell of cows, lakes and land, hard physical work, and the affection of grandparents, step-grandparents, half-cousins, aunts and half-aunts, an assortment of half and ex-uncles, a complicated and joyful group who he always called his people.
He attended New Hampton Prep School on a baseball scholarship, a time he once described as the first time in his life he understood what it meant to be truly happy. He received officer's training in the Marine Corps during World War II, where he was forced to think about what he was willing to live and to die for. But the war ended just as he was about to ship out to the Pacific. He returned to the East Coast and worked cutting timber in Maine and received a BA from Dartmouth College. With the war and college behind him, he returned to what he said was one activity he knew to be true: hard physical labor. He got a job shoveling pig iron in a steel mill near Baltimore, and on his days off would go to the courthouse to watch proceedings. Moved by the court's unjust treatment of the poor and powerless, he found his calling. He attended law school at the University of Wisconsin, and in the summer of 1950, he met Marty Lessig and fell in love. They married the following year. It was a love and marriage that lasted until his death. After graduation, they moved to North Carolina, where he served a second time with the Marines during the Korean War, and where the first of their 5 children was born.
He began his law practice in Madison in 1953 and became a founding member of Lawton and Cates law firm in 1958. His practice lasted until 1990 and was almost exclusively trial work in almost every area of the law, plaintiffs and defendants, and in almost every forum. He was guided by his love of people, and his belief that individual human beings have dignity, and our laws and system of justice need to protect the weak from being crushed by the strong. He prosecuted corrupt police officers, defended both the university and students during the uprisings of the 60s, defended doctors on the constitutionality of anti-abortion laws, served as a public defender, and in 1973-74 served as special counsel to the House Judiciary Committee in charge of investigating and presenting the evidence leading to the impeachment and resignation of President Nixon. In addition to his practice, he taught law at the University of Wisconsin from 1956 until 1980, and at McGeorge School of Law from 1982 until 1985. His joy in the adventure of learning and living and learning, his humor, wisdom, humility, curiosity, and kindness, indeed his magnificent love, made him a great teacher of his students, his colleagues, his friends, his 5 children, their spouses, and his 18 grandchildren. Almost everybody knew and learned something. He gave off warmth. He had a big and open heart, and he made a marvelous father and friend. He liked to tell his stories, loved making fun of himself, and he liked to listen to yours.
He served 1 term in the State Assembly, 2 terms in the UW Board of Visitors, a term in Madison Board of Education, and 2 terms in the State Bar Board of Governors. In 1967, he and Marty bought a farm south of Spring Green, Wisconsin. He had a daughter who loved horses, 4 sons, and he once said he worried his sons would not learn how to be men living in the suburbs. From then on, he was a man just as a boy. One for the city and one the country. He loved being outside. He loved physical work. He taught his children to love the same things. Family worked together and played together. Before anybody had ever heard of taking a long-distance bike trip, he and his 4 sons were riding 3-speed bicycles 270 miles to northern Wisconsin every August to Lake Cottage. He loved rowing for hours, swimming long distances, and canoe trips. When he retired in 1990, at the age of 64, he walked 450 miles north of Georgia on the Appalachian Trail. In his retirement, he was in 3 book clubs, served as president of the Ice Age Park and Trail Association, on the Committee on Campaign Financing Reform, the Institute on Aging, on the board of Marshall Urban Foundation, and was a frequent judge for high school expulsion cases.
That was
We're going to just read the first part of the last paragraph. He's preceded in his death by his parents, Lyman and Margaret Cates, and by a grandson, Peter Cates. He's survived by his wife, Marty, 5 children, 16 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. My father, my dad, lived above the waterline, the daily abstractions, and temptations that drown out things that really matter. He didn't see life as full of endless difficulties, but rather endless opportunities and fun. He was known as a great storyteller, as you all know. But from my perspective, his real gift was listening. As his children can tell you, he listened so well, he could tell your stories better than you could, even decades later. Listening dignifies the storyteller and listening. And Dad made us all feel our story, our experiences, our lives matter a lot. He was a caring and endearing person who saw the best in people. And he appreciated almost everyone for the something they had to offer the world. It was that ability to seize the beauty of living, which I think was a major accomplishment of his life. Something that was dear to him and which he instilled in everyone around him. We have some written tributes, as you can see on your program, from friends which bespeak this character. Before we read the first written statement, I want to invite Brett Hulsley, representative of the Wisconsin State Assembly, to come up. This assembly gave a citation to our father's life and his contribution to the legislature. And I want to thank you, Brett.
Thanks, Dick. There's really not much that the Assembly can agree on right now in bipartisan fashion, but one of the things is that Dick Cates is a great man, and he has a wonderful family. So thank you very much.
Written statements, as you can see in your program. The first is by Robert Kastenmeier, Wisconsin U.S. Congressman from 1959 to 1991 and past member of the House Judiciary Committee, a very dear friend of my father's. He says, "I will surely miss Dick Cates. He was my good friend and a colleague whose work ethic was legendary. His career was marked by exceptional common sense, devotion to duty, and a deep commitment to serve the law. One example I remember was his brilliant legal analysis of the case against President Nixon, which he took the time to individually share with each member of the committee. He was a special, one of a kind, and he left a significant legacy. I'm proud to have called him friend." The next statement I will read is by Professor Stanley Cutler, Professor Emeritus, University of Wisconsin, and author of the seminal work, The History of Watergate, entitled Wars of Watergate, and I believe that Professor Cutler is in the audience here with us. In his book, Wars of Watergate, which really is a tome of the history of that period, he gives credit to Father. Stanley says, Willard Hurst was a legendary law professor at the UW Law School. But Willard Hurst once said to me, if I ever were really in trouble, I'd turn to Cates. History books usually attach the names of famous and prominent persons to great events, but in truth, events often proceed from the energy directed and generated from below. It's referring to Dad's work in the courtroom. Dick Cates' role in the committee's proceedings, he's talking about the House Judiciary Committee, is singularly crucial, for he developed a plausible explanation for the disparate events of Watergate and made them comprehensible to a key group of Republicans and Southern Democrats and Democrats from the North. Interviews of the congressman along with the committee's records leave no doubt of Dick's contribution. We have not seen the likes of this coalition in nearly 4 decades, and such agreement is unimaginable in today's mindless partisan divide. The next statement is from our Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. My father and Hillary was very young, worked together in Washington on the impeachment inquiry, and Hillary says, "Dear Cates family, please accept my heartfelt condolences on the loss of your beloved father, Richard. I had the great personal pleasure of working for Dick on the House Judiciary Committee during the Nixon impeachment proceedings. He was a brilliant lawyer and a remarkable man, and I always look back on that experience with great fondness and appreciation to him for giving me the opportunity. At this difficult time, please know my thoughts and prayers are with you, your mother Marnie, brothers and sisters, extended family, and all those whose lives your father touched." Dick was loved by many. He'll be greatly missed. With deepest sympathy, I am sincerely yours, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
The next statement was sent by our Chief Justice of this Wisconsin Supreme Court, Shirley Dickinson. She could not come because she was going on a family vacation out of the state. We don't have a picture of my father hugging Shirley, but his statement is worth 1,000 hugs. Dear family and friends of Dick Cates, I am sorry that I am not able to join you today for this service celebrating the life of Richard. I will miss the stories and the fellowship. I will miss seeing old friends, some of whom have not seen each other for many years. I will miss meeting new friends who join me in expressing admiration for Dick. I must confess, however, that a small part of me is somewhat relieved that I will not be delivering these remarks personally. I would not be able to speak without shedding a tear, even though I am committed to the principle that Chief Justices do not cry in public. Because I know full well that we will not again see the tall, lanky fellow coming toward us, smiling, hands outstretched, with a story to tell and an urgent plea that we work against injustice wherever it exists. His premise, if not us, who? If not now, when? Like Dick came to Madison from New York, as did many early and late settlers of this state, so did I. I watched him from afar and then from near. I heard about Richard Cates when I first arrived in Madison in 1956 as a graduate student in the law school, and then made his acquaintance in 1962 when I joined the Lavallis, Seneca, and Doyle law firm, which had matters pending with the Lawton and Cates law firm. Furthermore, the Senecans, Doyles, Lawtons, and Cateses were friends. Dick Cates represented many clients in the Wisconsin trial courts and in the Wisconsin Supreme Court during his long career. He appeared in at least 13 cases before the Wisconsin Supreme Court from 1954 through 1976, arguing his first case in the Supreme Court in 1954, 3 years after graduating from law school. His ability to digest key issues, explain them simply, and make persuasive argument was recognized by litigants, fellow counsel, and the bench. I got to know Dick well when he and I taught at the University of Wisconsin Law School. Each of us, along with Frank Remington, taught our separate classes at the 7:50 a.m. time slot. Dick taught military law and trial courses from 1952 through 1977. Frank, the longtime professor, taught criminal law courses. I taught federal income tax from 1966 through 1976. The three of us would meet in the faculty lounge for about a half hour or so before class for our wake-up coffee and conversation about whatever was of interest that day. No one but I was interested in tax law. And I was not too interested in all the sports talk. We talked of clinical and traditional lectures and the Socratic method in law school teaching, the role of women in law practice, local, state, and national politics, pending cases around the country, problems in the civil and criminal justice system, and most importantly, our respective commitments to the access to justice and equal justice for all. The talk was stimulating as we came to issues from different perspectives. Dick is a trial lawyer, Frank is a criminal law professor, and I predominantly as a civil transaction lawyer. Frank and I, like all of Madison, were spellbound by Dick's talk about Dick's service to the House Judiciary Committee and the Nixon impeachment inquiry. When I left for the court, Dick and I continued to follow each other's career and see each other at various law school, bar, and community events. We come here today to remind each other about Dick's life and contributions. Since Dick's passing, there has been an outpouring in the press about Dick Cates as a man and his service to this community, the state, and the nation. The stories have been marvelous reading as we learn more about the many facets of his life and read stories we did not know or had forgotten. We appreciate Richard Cates during his life, and I am happy that many of us told him so. Dick Cates will be missed by his family, lawyers, judges, and the community. We have lost a friend and a courageous lawyer, faithfully and brilliantly representing his clients, and a hero in the pursuit of justice.
I heard there was a secret chord David played and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall and the major lift, and the baffled keep composing. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing, hallelujah, beauty in the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to a kitchen chair. She broke your throne, she cut your hair, and from your lips she drew hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Baby, I've been here before. I've seen this room and I've walked this floor. I used to live alone before I knew you. I've seen your flag on the marble arch. Love is not just a victory march. It's a chord and it's a broken hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
There was a time when you let me know what's real and going on below. Now you never show it to me, do you? Remember